we're going to have Jeremy come up and talk about his experience in the Web3 industry. He was a former writer at Bitcoin Magazine. And while he gets set up, feel free to...
So we were talking before, and thank you to Sean, Mike, Matt, and anybody else. I know you guys truly are decentralized, so good job on that. We were talking like, I don't know, I've worked in the industry for a while, maybe we could talk about that. And I just recently wrote an article for Bitcoin Magazine that I thought from the title was pretty relevant to what's going on right now, so I thought we'd focus on that. So to that, has anybody heard of the term the crypto president? And I'm going to actually ask you to raise your hands. I hate when people do that, but I'm going to be the one. If you have the crypto president. Yeah. So now, any wild guesses who the crypto president is? Feel free to raise your hand or say it out loud. Okay, that's good. I actually haven't heard that one yet, and that seems actually like a really official way to go. Any other guesses? Barron Trump? He might be the internet president from the sound of it. He might run the whole thing. So we're going to get a little bit more into that. In fact, we're going to go take it all the way back to the 90s, just like a Portlandia episode, where I think there's some lessons to be learned from an example of a really similar situation to what we see going on now. And that is actually President Clinton. So when you hear about Trump today, and he is being called the crypto president, which, you know, the crypto president, the cryptocurrency president, but not the cryptography president. And if you go back to the time in the 90s when crypto was short for cryptography, we were at a point in time when the internet was, I don't want to say it was brand new because technically it wasn't, but for the first time we had the revolution of PCs, personal computers. I still remember at my own house when we brought in our first Apple and we put it in the den and we called it the computer room. And today, if anybody had a computer room, you'd wonder what the heck they're talking about. Like, everybody's got a computer. We're at the point where people don't even have TVs or computers anymore. They have laptops and they just do everything and watch everything from there. We had a computer room because it was the 90s and everything was changing very quick. So at the time, what was at the core of that change was cryptography. It was this magic trick that up until then was reserved specifically for secret agent missions and 007 bond, which is not a financial bond, but it was something where it was a very interesting time. You had corporations and you had freedom fighters banding together to bring cryptography to the public. It was a very strange, unique combination of forces, but it was a whole new situation for the government that up until this point had it pretty much on lockdown. And so at this point in time, that group of corporations and freedom fighters had basically picked out who their candidate would be to lead the way, which was Clinton, who at the time actually was not favored to win. And sure enough, they got behind him, he won, and that is when all hell broke loose on the industry. They thought they were getting their guy, and things turned so draconian so quickly. Well, we'll get into it. So let me find all hell broke loose. There we go. So it's an interesting thing when you're running for president, which I realize just saying it like that sounds like I've done it, but it's nothing new to make promises and for us, the public, to question those promises. And actually, it doesn't take a whole lot for a president to start to make these promises and attach himself to a topic and then lasso in a whole bunch of new votes and money, which is the two things that they're going after. And so on May 5th, yeah, I didn't even have to look down, May 5th of 2024, Trump publicly spoke and gave 5 sentences that from that point forward tied him to the crypto and Bitcoin industry. 5 sentences, moved on to something else, walked away, and he was now the crypto president. So there's not a lot that you can say in 5 sentences. You can make a promise, but there's not a lot more you can do. That's what he did publicly. What was a lot more interesting, maybe, is what was going on privately. So there was a dinner party. Forgive me, I didn't write down which town in the Bay Area this happened at. Put on by David Sachs and Chamath. I'm gonna butcher his last name. Can anybody help me out? You know who I'm talking about? Was it? Yeah, Paula Hapidia. Okay. I practiced it because I'm sensitive about names. I want to get it right. My favorite NBA player is Nikola Jokic, and I spent years hearing Jokic and every other thing, but I screwed that one up. Everybody I think knows who I'm talking about. 2 big industry icons threw him this dinner, and at the dinner was full of Silicon Valley fintech and crypto fundraisers, entrepreneurs. Largely Democrats at this get-together. And by the end of that dinner, Trump walked away with $12 million. And maybe more importantly, he walked away being anointed by the crypto fintech industry. Now, 32 years earlier and 32 miles away, I'm not joking, I didn't have the addresses that these parties happened at, but the towns they happened in are 32 miles away from each other. And 32 years earlier, President Clinton was at a little shindig that was put together for him. It was done by John Sculley, who was the then Apple CEO. So this was that weird, funky time when Steve Jobs wasn't the CEO. John Sculley at that point, maybe, I don't want to say the most powerful man, but obviously one of the top 5 most powerful people in Silicon Valley. They were poaching salmon, and about 100 of the Silicon Valley leading tech entrepreneurs getting together, who were largely Republican at that point in time. So one quote that John Sculley said is, "I am still a Republican, but I am voting for Bill Clinton." And what would you know? Bill Clinton left that night with money for his coffers, being anointed the new pro-crypto president, pro-cryptography president. And I'm not just trying to rope in that word. Maybe it was just software or personal computers. No, at that point in time, cryptography was at the focal point, because if you have a software company and you put all this work into good code, a good program, the ability for you to make your money back on that largely depended on selling it overseas. And at that point in time, anything that had basically any cryptography at all would be guarded by the government's munition lists. Any sort of strong encryption was considered a munition. Like loosely you could say a weapon, but the munition list has all sorts of things on it. But the point being, it was controlled by the government. You could not send it out. And if this was able to be repealed in some way, it meant the industry, 10xing the profit that they can make off of a single product that they were making. So it was the floodgates. And so the industry left that night. You have Clinton leaving with money and with the public support, and you had the industry leaving with the promise that he was going to fight for cryptography and take it off the munition list. So interesting. We've got these 2 parties. We've got what happened at them. We have the flip sides: a Democratic president with a Republican backing. Over here we have a Republican president with Democratic backing, who are going forward with these promises of what they would do for the industry. So today, we talked about promises and how easy it can be to go back on that. One of the things that I'm hearing that's pretty, I think, positive, I think everybody would agree, I hate the term, but I'm going to butcher this one too. MAGA Avengers? Is that how it's said? Has anybody heard that? MAGA, MAGA, and Avengers. Yeah, MAGA, but they combined it in like one word. MAGA Avengers is how I think it's pronounced. And so it's all of his, the people who he's kind of brought in with him. Does any idea, can people throw out a few names? So like RFK. Anybody else? Tulsi. Yep. Yep. Okay, yeah. I just heard that today, right? Yeah. So I know. And based on other things we hear with his name, it's like he like put the word out himself so that people could start talking about it. And let's not forget like the senators too. Like I think Cynthia Lummis and yeah, some of these other ones who we haven't particularly associated with Trump himself, but who have been loud voices for being pro Bitcoin, pro crypto. And then to another point is he's talked about this advisory board, which was the Charles Hoskinson is supposed to be a part of that, and who knows who's going to make that up. You know, they won't have any sort of official, you know, senatorial position or whatever, but that could be 10 industry experts, that could be 50 from all over. So when you start thinking about, well, okay, what if Trump drops the ball on his promise? We've got, you know, 10, 12 names that we said of strong people who have showed their support. And then we've got this advisory board below that. Maybe there'll be enough to kind of like catch the ball if he drops it. Now, let's see. Yeah, okay. So Clinton, to me, that's a positive situation. I'm just going to say that. And actually, to backtrack, I'm not, I don't have any political affiliations. So any criticisms that I bring up tonight or anytime, it's not me scoring points for the Democrats or scoring points for the Republicans. This is research from what's that? Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which is, I've been creating content for 4 years. I get in the research mode, as I'm sure anybody knows who works in the office or whatever, and you just go at it and you find interesting things, and this is what I'm pulling up. So what I will say is that's pretty positive to me. So we've got, this president who's said some things, not sure about the promises, but we've got that crew, the MAGA Avengers below him, and we've got the advisory board below him. That feels pretty good. Compared to Clinton, you're like, well, what did Clinton have? The reality is, Trump wishes he had the support that Clinton had. So Clinton, does this resonate with anybody? Clinton had somebody who invented the internet. Does that ring any bells with anybody? Al Gore. Al Gore was somehow known as the guy who invented the internet, which he very clearly did not. But at that point, he had years under his belt of fighting tooth and nail for not only to support and regulation for pro-internet, but also to find ways to fund programs, whether it was children in school getting the internet hooked up to their schools or different things like that. He had done a lot to support it. And I mean, he'd done so much that he was synonymous with having actually created the internet. The person he put in charge of his transition team, who would then go on to be the chief of staff, the White House chief of staff, was John Podesta, who had an entire career of being a lawyer and pro-lobbyist of not just the software community, but the encryption community themselves. He was literally like the #1 lawyer for fighting against all the issues of people just trying to write some software and then ending up on the munition list. So between the guy who invented the internet and the #1 person who knows how to fight for people against the government in terms of cryptography, he's looking pretty good. And then the staff. Remember, we talked about the MAGA Avengers, but then we talked about the advisory board with maybe Hoskinson. So they brought in a whole crew of, I don't know how to put it. So they brought in a bunch of academics and scientists, computer scientists, and eclectic dorks there is a phrase being passed around that the length of hair and the amount of sandals you would start seeing around DC was about to, tenfold or something like that. And to the point where there's another quote here I want to bring up. This was John Perry. If anybody can help me. Barlow, thank you. Yeah. So this is one of the cypherpunks. This is one of the cornerstones of like free open source software. And he said, these are also people who don't even believe in government really. He said, extremely smart, conscious freedom lovers. Hell, a lot of them are deadheads, so fans of the Grateful Dead. I was sure that after they were fully moved in, they'd face down the National Security Agency and the FBI. And the truth is, we had all these people, and as I mentioned before, all hell broke loose. They faced the NSA and the FBI, and they backed down. They fell down. They did nothing. So one of the big things, the most egregious thing that happened is the Clipper chip. It was this idea that the government would give the public encryption, good, strong encryption, but at the cost of having a backdoor in every single computer, every single digital device. And that would give the government the ability to take any single thing that you encrypted, any message, any email, any file, and just immediately just turn it over. It made it easier than ever to completely take away your control of your internet expression. And the cypherpunks that was directly what they were fighting against. And that they did something cool. They're known for coding, but their biggest defenses against this was just social opinion. They would create memes before they were called memes and send them out. And so to anybody who's familiar with Intel, there's this slogan. It's their logo, and it says Intel inside, and you'd have it on like your computer or whatever. And so they made these stickers that say Big Brother inside, and they started passing them out, and it got the point across. And so I've got some, here, we'll do that, and then we'll do this over here, and then these aren't the original ones, but ones I had printed up, because I think they're pretty cool. So there was I have a whole list here, but for sake of time, I'll just say there was a lot of other issues that happened during the Clinton's presidency. And at the end, the one thing that he's kind of known for doing that was positive was he did eventually, you could say, relax export controls on encryption. But this came after the trials of Phil Zimmerman, if you're familiar with him, and Daniel Bernstein was actually the one that went through, won, and caused a new law. If you've ever heard code is law, or no, code is speech, that was literally, came off the lips of a judge in Northern California in 1994. And we now have that to lean on. To this day, it's been defended, I don't know how many times. I don't know if it's thousands, definitely hundreds, because of what happened there. So that already happened. And then Bill Clinton came out and publicly said, hey, we're going to relax export controls, even though at that point it was now illegal for the government to enforce export controls. So the point I'd like to get at, I wrote more than I realized, but to sum it up is that what we're in for, I don't know, and I'm not going to try and tell you one way or the other. I just hope to bring a possibility to you, some education on things that have already happened. We tend to think that our timelines are the most unique, the most important. This was the most important election of all time, only more important than the last election. That was the most important of all time. And I think there's a lot to be drawn from history. You know, back when this all happened, when it happened for Clinton, when it happened for the software and internet industries, that was the most important thing. And the fact that we're still leaning on the laws that came down from that day, to me, speaks loudly. So I just think as we're going into it, just be very aware. We have an administration that's publicly saying they're pro-crypto, pro-Bitcoin. And I don't think the question is necessarily, will they be pro or not? I think the question is, will the good outdo the bad that comes with it? Because we can be sure that there's going to be compromises made every step of the way. So just something to offer you. The closing thought would be that up until this day, well, not this day specifically, but the crypto and Bitcoin industries have been able to kind of like grow and build in the shadows, so to speak. We've been bouncing up on regulations more over the past few years specifically, but it really feels to me at this point that there's an entire presidential campaign that platformed on this, that those days of coding in the shadows is over for our industries, and that we're in a new age where good for Bitcoin or good for crypto, I think is going to be completely meaningless. I think it's just rhetoric at this point. So just something to be aware of as we go forward, and yeah, I'll leave it at that. So yeah.
Was Phil Zimmerman the one that put the code in the book and got on the airplane?
He didn't do that. It was his code. I can't remember the name of the person who did that, but yeah. Do you want to expand on the point of why that was?
I thought it was like that was freedom of speech. The book is best expression of freedom of speech. Put it in code in the book.
So what was critical about that? What would taking a book with code in it across country borders be?
Across the border, and then I guess proven that you passed the test, or
yeah, I mean, what's code? You know, just because it's running on your computer doesn't mean that the exact same code that's written in a book is different. It just has a different ability to process. And so if you take that and you write it in a book, and then all of a sudden you bring that across the border, is that exporting? Somebody else, there's a guy who still is in New York City. He wrote it on, oh no, this was, it's a different story. There's a couple of fun different ones. Adam Back wrote it on a shirt. He wrote the PGP on a shirt and then did something similar. He crossed the border. And it's like,
yeah, so she talked about the case with the judge that code is speech. I thought it was the book. I thought the act of taking the book was the broke all that open.
That was the social movement. That was going back to the memes, like the sticker. That was a part of a social outcry. And I had the opportunity to interview Phil Zimmerman, and I asked him, at the time what was popular, Jason Lowry was speaking a lot about using the Second Amendment to defend Bitcoin, that it can be like a weapon, a national strategic weapon. And I asked, he had said that Phil Zimmerman's lawyer talked to him privately and said that that's why they won their case, which two problems with that. One, they didn't win their case. The case was dropped. And two, Bernstein won his case. That's why we have the law that code is speech, is because Bernstein won. And then Zimmerman's case got dropped. And then two is I asked Zimmerman about that. He said they never once entertained the idea of the Second Amendment because the First Amendment was something that the media understood. They're the media. Their entire living is off of speech and freedom of speech. So when they realized, when it clicked for them that this battle was one for the most important amendment for them, they got completely on board. He said he had interviews every single day. He had people wanting interviews every single day that he was there. They didn't have enough support, or the other way around. Point being, it was the public outcry. It was the media game behind the Zimmerman case. It was all these cool little acts that cypherpunks were doing, whether it was printing out code on shirts or books or any of that. Those weren't legal actions in any way, kind of shape or form. But it was Marilyn Hall Patel was the judge in the Ninth Court of Northern California who made that law code of speech. But it was to me it was a really cool time to be alive. I have no idea, I was running around playing handball or something like that. But I think that would have been a really fun time to be a part of these groups meeting up, deciding to do things. Like I said, these are coders, and they would meet up, not trying to figure out like code ways to fight back, but think of funny ideas like Big Brother Inside and writing on a sticker and then putting that out everywhere. Yeah. Any other questions? And so just to speak earlier, I thought my career so far, I love to talk about. It just seemed like it would be aimless. I could stand up here and talk about, I don't know, like weird things that happen in hotels or marriages, or like I wouldn't talk about those, but I don't know where I could have gone with that. But I'd love to, talk with anybody else as far as bringing something up that could develop further. I thought this was like relevant. Yeah, seeing how welcome to the start of the super cycle.
So, what are your thoughts around World Liberty Financial?
Sorry?
World Liberty Financial, Trump's DeFi.
Oh, I just think it's evidence that he doesn't understand. Yeah, his words are pretty hollow, which, I don't even like hate it that much, because it's like if I think of everything that I said out loud or on Twitter or whatever that later on I got schooled on, I was totally boneheaded for saying, like, I can't hold it against him. So I don't know, does Trump actually kind of figure it out at a certain point? Does he completely abdicate to people who do? That's actually kind of what Clinton did. Like, Clinton didn't actually do much on any of this. With the Clipper chip, he yielded the decision to Al Gore. It was literally the guy who made the internet who pulled the trigger on the Clipper chip. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, personally, I could care less. I don't get into any of that stuff. And then more importantly, like broader strokes, I just think it reflects that he doesn't really know what he's talking about. Do you have like a deep thought on that?
No, I was just curious. They were sort of 70% of the tickets, but
So they're good at what they do, I guess. I don't know. Tokenomics. Hmm. And I mean, fundraising. There's yeah. But you want money and you want votes. What are the two ways of getting that? And maybe to them, they thought that was a way to get both. Maybe they thought that was their like symbol of getting into the industry that they were now representing. Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Yeah. Longest
That
15
was-
minutes.
Yeah, no, that's cool. And thank you, Kurt, for also presenting. It was very interesting to see the different perspectives from the writing aspect and that industry and Web3, and then, of course, accounting, which is something I do, so I completely understand our dilemma. But yeah, I was passing around the flyer that has our QR code with a link to our events, future event schedule, so feel free to subscribe to that, as well as our newsletter. And what I'll do now after this is I'll post a recap of the entire meeting. And if anybody missed, like, or we had latecomers come in, you can always catch up on some of the things that we missed. Besides that, there's plenty of food, so help yourself. And, now we can just kind of have a very laid back networking session. So go mingle, get to know each other. We have some newcomers as well, so introduce yourself. And yeah, thanks everyone for coming and making this an incredible event as always. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.